Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, breadwinners, thread spinners, welcome to the TNF podcast. Like, comment, share, subscribe, click on that bell for notifications. All right, some upcoming shows we've got for you. We've got Alex Weissman from Blackest Dawn. That's going to be on the 2nd of June at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard. Dan Zimmerman from Harvest and the Hope Conspiracy. That's going to be on the 9th of June at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard. We had John Joseph. The internet went out in my neighborhood, so we didn't get to do that broadcast. So we're working on a new date with him, tentatively the 17th of June at 5 p.m. And then Carl Severson from Nora, Ferret Records, Good Fight Entertainment. That's going to be on the 23rd of June at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard. I got an official merchandise company, hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. Use the code 20 for 20% off your entire order. If you like hardcore related stuff and film related stuff, you'll love it. I love it. They're great feeling shirts. Check them out. They feel really soft, and you get a discount. So, my next guest has played with the likes of Hogan's Heroes, OS101, Murphy's Law. He's a longtime New Jersey scenester and guitar player. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John Cuccinello. How's it going, John?
Hey Jay, how you doing, man?
I'm doing outstanding, man. Enjoying this beautiful day in North Carolina.
That's
What's been
awesome.
new with
Well,
you, man?
listen, happy Memorial Day, happy Memorial Day weekend, and I want to
Oh, that's
thank
right.
all the vets that are that who have served, who have made the ultimate sacrifice. Um, you know, without them, we wouldn't be here talking right now. So happy
Very
Memorial
true.
Day.
Very true. Happy Memorial Day, everybody. Preemptively. So one thing I like to ask of, the guests that come on the show, and I really appreciate you doing this. How did you get into music? Did you grow up in like a musical family? Did you have family members, friends? How did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a sister who's like 5 years older than me, and when she'd have to get up earlier than I would, to get ready for school. And, it was like the old school 8-track player that she had. And every morning I was like waking up to like a different sound that I was very unfamiliar with. My dad was listening to Frank Sinatra, and that was like the household theme. But, I'd hear like these sounds coming from her room that ended up being like Nazareth and like early Aerosmith and Ted Nugent. And I think all really has to go to her because that really kind of turned me on to rock and roll, and wanted it made me want to learn more about music. Even though I was young and I really didn't know what the hell was going on, hearing these cool sounds coming from the other room um, really sparked my interest in a who is that band you were listening to this morning, because that one song was really cool. And um and, and really, with the 8 tracks there wasn't much artwork, so she ended up like kind of feeding me the albums, and that's what turned me on to album art and standing, looking at all the images on a record and just kind of letting it take you away.
Yeah. And so, did you play in any sort of like a high school band or like, anything like that that was no, nothing.
No, I really didn't. At that age, I mean, we're probably talking, I was maybe just going into junior high school when I started to learn a little bit about bands and stuff like that. I was really at a young age, I was racing bicycle motocross, I was playing baseball. Um, and an instrument at the time, really, I wasn't really thinking about that at that age.
What do you remember like your earliest memory of like your first show? Like, I remember my parents took me to the fairgrounds and I saw Paul Revere and the Raiders, whom I
Wow.
had no familiarity with, but they were big like back in the 60s or whatever. But what do you remember as your first like, you know, concert going experience? Doesn't have to be hardcore, I hear a lot of people go seeing like Kiss. That's a big one for a lot of people that come on this show. They always talk about Kiss and like, "Oh man, I
Yeah,
saw Kiss back," you know?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was my sister again lugged me to Giant Stadium, and it was Foreigner, Aerosmith, and Ted Nugent. I can't remember who opened the show, but I was just, was kind of blown away by just the amount of people. I was new to it, and that literally was my first concert with my sister. Yeah.
That's incredible. And so how
Yeah.
did that seg into like uh your hardcore tenure? Like what got you involved in that scene? Friends, peers?
Um. Well, funny enough, when you go from the grammar school where I lived in Nutley to the junior high school, it's like all the schools kind of come together in this one facility, and you end up meeting a lot of people. And in eighth grade, I met Mark Ryan, um, which everybody knows, that the singer from Supertouch. um, and I distinctively remember, the end of eighth grade, getting ready to go away for summer, which was coming down to Ortley Beach. And then when I went back for my first year of high school, Mark was really the one who turned me on to the Dead Kennedys and the Plasmatics, and even Adam and the Ants. And he had gotten turned on to the hardcore scene like that summer, which would have been probably the summer of like 5, 4, 3, 2, like 81, 82. And he started to go to shows at CB's, and he was telling me all about his ventures for the summer. And he's the one who really turned me on to hardcore. It scared the shit out of me, especially the first time I listened to that Dead Kennedys record. Um, but there was something about that music that took it to another level, um, that maybe Aerosmith really wasn't doing. This attack of music, and that's how I got turned on to like the hardcore punk scene, was through Mark.
How did that seg into you like playing guitar? Because you mentioned you didn't have any like musical experience. So what kind of inspired you to pick up an axe?
Um, by that time, after hearing these bands like, Black Flag, Damage, and stuff like that, that really started to kind of pique my interest. And my sister was following a local band up there at the time. They were called Pharaoh, and they played a couple of times in Nutley at the old Franklin movie theater, and I got to go see them. And then I was getting like a little bit of a charge out of it. Like I liked, I liked the aggro of it, and I thought, well, you know what, maybe I'll learn how to play guitar. And what so happens is my mom, which I didn't know, had like this little mini acoustic guitar that was like up in the attic. And I kept on stressing that I'd like to go take guitar lessons, and learn how to read music. And so she pulls down this acoustic out of the attic and signs me up for group classes at the local music store. And I get there, and I'm like really excited, to finally learn. And it was one of the worst experiences I ever had, because I had all these guys there that made like novices, where I was like an absolute beginner. And the fucking teacher, like after we introduce ourselves, like grabs like my little acoustic guitar and just like starts playing it like it's like this ukulele, like, tiptoe through the tulips. And it was like after that first class, like I never went back again. And that was going to be the beginning of me learning how to read music. I still don't know how to read music till today, but that was going to be the beginning, and it ended really quick. And so then the outlaw side of it all came in, where I just started to sit friends who had a like-minded interest, and started picking up little chords here and there.
It's awesome, man. Yeah, I remember my first experience playing guitar. I actually went tried to get lessons too. Uh Instructor was all drunk and like smoking cigarettes and stuff, and I just very unpleasant, and I was like I
Yeah.
think I'm gonna try to go on my own. So you ended up being like
Yeah.
self-taught then.
Yeah, yeah. And listen, I learned the hard way, which was listening to my record player and trying to find what would be the root note, and stumbling through it until I could finally learn a song.
Yeah.
So
You
I
play that
really
one
I
hook
did
and
the
then you
hard
just
way
keep playing it until you get it, right?
until you get it. And I never really understood playing with feel. Like, I have cousins who were than me, who were playing in local rock bands and stuff, and they were telling me about tapping your foot and just trying to feel the music, and that took a long time for me, um, because I was teaching myself these notes, and I didn't grab onto it till much later, but yeah, it was a tough way to learn music, sure, but I learned it.
Yeah. It whatever works, I suppose. And so
Yeah,
how did that kind of lead into the formation of Hogan's Heroes? Was this like friends you had going to shows in the scene, or how did that whole come about?
yeah. Well, basically, we had moved from Nutley down to Ortley Beach, and the high school that I was going to be attending, which I did attend, was High School East. And the first guys I started to jam with was in a band called The Unexpected, and I was a really bad rhythm guitar player. I mean, I'm just going to completely fess up to that. I wanted to play guitar, but I was really bad. I was still learning. But I
Sure.
jammed with these guys, and they were really cool guys. So that was like my first punk band that I had played with. And then when the bass player left, um, I moved over to bass, which I found to be so much easier to play. Um, and in that band, I started to learn even more about root notes and stuff like that. So my first official band that I had played in was The Unexpected. It wasn't really the style of music that I heard myself playing. So I think it was the beginning of my junior year. Prior to my junior year, I started to put the word out that I was looking to start like a straight up hardcore band, thrash band. Um, and within the first few months of school, I ended up meeting what was the original drummer, the original singer of Hogan's Heroes, and then we looked for a guitar player, and that guitar player went to a rival high school, um, and that's how we started Hogan's Heroes. Was two other guys that I went to high school with who were much younger than I was, and then George, who was going to high school north.
Now, when you guys started playing, how well were you received? Do you feel like, you guys were kind of like, instantly like welcomed into the scene, or was it one of those things, I know a lot of bands have trouble in their respective like their local scenes, but then they go somewhere else and it's like, everybody loves them. So
Yeah.
do you feel like, people were pretty receptive to what you guys were doing initially?
Ah, yeah. I mean, you know, for the younger people out there, the hardcore scene and the punk scene back then was so, especially in Ocean County, it was a small group of people. You basically knew everybody. Um, and when we started, we practiced almost every day after school, and we knew what we wanted to do. And even at our first show, you got to realize, like, any of the kids that you were going to school with from anywhere in Ocean County was going to show up to that show. And so it was a great welcoming when we debuted. It was a lot of fun. um, and yeah, so we had a great start out of the gate locally. I think maybe it was a little harder outside of our area, even though at the time, you had bands like AOD and Pleased Youth and Bedlam, who were really the core of New Jersey at the time. And we got a lot of shows with those guys very early on, and that helped kind of cultivate us to where we were going to end up being.
Um, and you guys, I remember that Hogan's Heroes released stuff on Resurrection AD Records.
Well, Hogan's Heroes, our first our first signing was with New Red Archives. Um,
Okay.
Prior to that, it was straight on records,
Okay.
and all the demos.
But you guys had a release with one of your projects through Res AD, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Our first OS101 EP was on Resurrection with AJ.
Okay. Okay. I thought it was on Hogan's Heroes because, interestingly enough, um, my roommate helped out AJ from Res AD. Like he was kind of like their street team
Yeah,
guy or something like that. And so he would always talk about Hogan's Heroes and OS 101 and that whole like New Jersey scene. You probably know him. But
yeah,
yeah, it was interesting because I got to hear about a whole another scene that I didn't really know about, because he was new to the scene in North Carolina and
yeah,
he would always talk about New Jersey and like going to see shows at Stone Pony and stuff like that. So
yeah,
that to me is really interesting because I don't often get to go. I've never been in a touring band, so I don't often get to go out to experience many other scenes, very often. So do you feel like it,
yeah,
you said it was
yeah.
a real tight-knit group of people. Did a lot of these people like share other projects with people?
Oh yeah. And getting back to Resurrection real quick, he did release a Hogan's Hero 7-inch called Uncle Ben. We had done
Okay.
it prior. We started a record label called Mofo Records at the time, and then they had taken it over. And that's when we were kind of segueing into becoming OS 101. So he does have a Hogan's Hero 7-inch. So you are
Okay.
correct on
I
that
knew I
one.
wasn't crazy.
Um, no, and I do apologize. Yeah, I mean, you had bands in this area like Lethal Aggression and Social Decay. Um, even up in North Jersey. I shouldn't say North Jersey, like the Bridgewater area. At the time, they were called Neurotic Impulse. They became Vision with Dave Franklin. Um, Sticks and Stones. All these bands were kind of intermingling with one another, and it was nothing to go out and jam with one of these other bands, even though you had your group. um, you know I think everybody opened themselves up to wanting to jam with other people, just to be together.
Sure. Sure. And do you guys hit the road pretty extensively, or were you guys mostly like concentrated in that area as far as shows are concerned?
With Hogan's Heroes, it was really kind of like the Northeast. With OS 101, we got out quite a bit. I mean, we were down in the Carolinas. We did. I mean, we played the bulk of the United States in OS 101, and that's when we had gotten onto Victory Records. We were able to finally kind of get out and do everything that we really wanted to do as Hogan's Heroes. We were
Sure.
finally able to do it as one.
Yeah, I remember Victory back in the day. I mean, they definitely like that kind of catapulted you, like if you were a hardcore band, to like being more
Yeah.
uh nationally and internationally recognized.
Yeah, I mean, they were definitely that label that was running at the time pretty much neck to neck with like Epitaph, um, Fat Records, and
Sure.
you know to have them reach out and show an interest, because our EP with AJ on Resurrection did extremely well, and we were really really happy about it, because even though we had a record deal when we were Hogan's Heroes. It never really flew. It never really took off like we hoped it would. Where
Right.
when we got onto, Victory, all our hard work was really kind of paying off, and
Sure.
you know, helped us finally get out into the Midwest and do everything that we wanted to do.
That's awesome. Yeah. And tour adventures. I love hearing about tour adventures, like specifically things that happen to hardcore bands, that nobody else could say ever happened, like I've heard some crazy stories about, people being assaulted or arrested or anything like that. Do you have any like just completely like wild stories? You do. Let's hear
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Again, it goes back to playing with Murphy's Law, um, which was again
Makes
probably
sense.
one of the greatest. Yeah, listen, the greatest experience I ever had. You know, grew up basically when I got turned on to hardcore music. Murphy's Law was the band for me. I mean, they piqued my interest, and there was no better band to me at the time than Chuck, Beans, Todd, and Jimmy. I mean, that band was just phenomenal. And so when I had the opportunity to finally go out with them, we played in Indiana, and I really don't remember the name of the place. It was a theater, and we're like 3, 4 songs in, having a blast, and the crowd was awesome. And I could see out of the corner of my eye that this kid was kind of getting, passed towards the stage, and I could just see his actions, like he was like taunting Jimmy as he was, getting thrown closer to the stage, and I could see the look in Jimmy's eyes that went from, we're having fun to this might not be fun, and we're so as this kid's getting kind of closer and closer to the stage, I see the kid throw up his middle fingers and everything like that. And then the next thing, Jimmy just jumps off the stage and right on top of this guy, and boom, right to the floor. And then of course I see Todd throw down his guitar, and Goat was on drums, and they go jumping into the crowd. So what do I got to do? I go jumping into the crowd. So this guy was just getting pummeled. I mean, Jimmy just had him by by the throat, and just throwing
Sure.
punches and leading him out the back door of the club. And it was like wintertime. And I remember the club door swinging open, and he just throws this kid out. He goes out, the door closes, and I'm thinking, what, I'm going to stand by the door here, because by that time the crowd was on their way backstage, and I'm standing in the door like trying to hold people back like I'm some kind of like big bouncer guy. I get shoved from behind, and on the ice in the middle of this alleyway, and half the half the crowd is now in this alleyway behind the club, and I kind of dust myself off with the snow, and I get up and I see this dude looking at me with his baseball hat on, and I'm like, yo, like, what the fuck, bro? And he's like, no, what the fuck with you? And in my peripheral vision, I could just see, it was like one of those Kodak moments where, I could see like the band members looking at me, and Skip was actually our roadie for that tour. Skip's looking at me, the crowd's like with this, like, what's he gonna do? Is he gonna react? And of course I did. I ended up throwing this kid a shot like right to the jaw. His baseball hat goes flying off. It lands in the drummer's hands, and it was just this complete debacle. The great thing is the crowd knew that the guy who was starting the trouble was wrong, so half of those guys were kicking this kid, and we were able to kind of get up, break it up, walk back into the club, and of course the show got shut down. Um, so basically Jimmy is telling Skip, get all the equipment, get the merch, get it in the van. So he goes, grabs the van, pulls it into the alleyway, and we're just pulling gear out of there as quick as we can, because this night is turning into that nightmare scenario. It's 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning in the middle of Indiana on a snowy, freezing night. And then out of nowhere, you could just hear this car come whipping around the corner, screeching on the brakes, and these kids get out with fucking guns.
Oh shit.
And yeah, and I just remember looking at Skip, and he looks at me. He's like, "Run!" you know, and everybody just tears off into different directions. And yeah, these kids just come flying down the alley with these guns, and I ended up hiding up in the balcony. Um, I know Skip went running down the road, and later on, the cops show up. Of course, it's late; it's early in the morning, and so we all kind of make our way and congregate on the floor of the theater, and we're all checking ourselves, making sure we're okay. Everybody's good, everybody's good. And the next thing, like, these Indiana state troopers come walking through the door. And the kid that I hit is, walking with this trooper. And then he just goes to the guy, like, "Which one of them hit you?" And he just looks at me and he goes, "That one." And I'm like, fuck. So he's like up against the stage. So there we are, like the whole band and Skip, we're up against the stage. And he comes walking over to me, and the trooper just looks at me and goes, "You not in New York City, boy. You in Indiana now." And I'm like, "Oh, man." He's like, "Give me your license." So he takes my I give him my license. He starts questioning me, and then he looks at the kid, and he just goes, "So listen, you want to press charges against him?" And he looks at me, and like, he knew he had the ball in his court, and he just looks at me. He goes, "No, I don't want to press no charges." He goes, "All right, why don't you guys shake hands and and talk about it?" And we did. We shook hands, and we got to talk a little while. So that's the craziness of the night, which was, there was guns, there was fights, and there was Indiana State Troopers. The thing that sucked was OS101 had just released our first record, and we had to go back to play that same theater like 2 months later. And I was hoping that dude wasn't going to show up, which he didn't, which was cool. But yeah, that's my road story.
Yeah, I was saying earlier, you're like, "Oh, it happened with Murphy's Law." I'm like, that checks out. That sounds about right.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
but you know
wild, man.
what? Why not with Murphy's Law? You know what I mean? To me, the greatest hardcore. I mean, why
Oh, they're
not?
great.
Let it be Murphy's Law.
Yeah,
That's my cool road story.
that's wild, man. It's always a fight, or like, I always hope to hear some bands like, "Oh yeah, and then some strippers came in our van," or something. But it's always fights. It's always fights.
Well, listen, there definitely was a part where the girls were on stage starting to disrobe, and
Oh shit.
that's a fact. There was a couple of girls who prior had gotten on stage, and they started to disrobe. I think that wasn't the first time that had happened with Murphy's Law. I mean, it was great, and that's what was making the show so great. The crowd was great. There was girls on the stage, and they're starting to like kind of like take off their punk t-shirts, and then you've got the one character in the crowd, and it just escalated, and ended
One
in a
guy
bad
who
way.
ruins it.
One guy ruined it all. Damn
What a
him.
dick. Jerk. That's crazy. Now, did you guys ever get the opportunity to go to Europe with OS 101?
No, no,
No.
no. Um,
Wow.
I think that we as a band had a lot of expectations being on Victory Records, and we assumed that one of the things would be, you know, that they would get us on the road, that they would get us on different tours, and that really wasn't the case.
No.
It was more, again, still, still intermingling with the guys that used to hang out with. Agent Orange, who was our good friends from very early on. We had gone on the road a couple times with them. Catch 22, who was our label mates, also from New Jersey. We had gone out with them a couple times, but we never made it over to Europe. We were going to play Canada with kind of like a stripped down version of UK subs, fell through. But that was a really hot time for bands. I mean, there was a lot, not that there's not a lot of bands today, but at that time, there were a lot of bands on the road all the time. And it was tough to jump on one of those tours because there's so much going on. So we never made it to Europe.
That's one thing I heard about Victory is that while they were pretty competent in their advertising and their distribution, they didn't give anything like tour support or, help with booking or management or anything like
No,
that.
not at all. I mean, we had done the whole they got us onto ASCAP BMI to protect our
Sure.
music, which is really cool. And we had worked out a publishing deal with them with another Victory, and that really played to our advantage. So we were getting our music out there a lot. They were very good at that. They were very good at distribution. They were very good. I mean, the crew at the time at Victory was top notch. And anything that we wanted for art, they absolutely did it for us. But as far as getting a lot of the bands out there, not so much. Like, of course, we knew the guys from Gray Area. So it was a matter of them being a phone call away. Hey, could we do a show with you? We'll get you a show down here. And really, yeah, I really thought that when we got signed to Victory, there was going to be some kind of a tour involved where we were going to disappear for 3 or 4 months, and that never happened.
That's a drag, man.
Yeah,
Especially when you say like you did all this hard work and it culminated into like, a pretty signing to a major like hardcore label at the time, and then it's just like nothing happens. Like how did you feel about that? Like the fact that they kind of, I don't know, don't they didn't really have what you guys
well,
expected. Like, how did you
well,
guys
I,
feel?
I think I think the blessing behind the whole thing, in life, I believe is to always try to find things. You try not to ponder on the negative. So the fact that we were able to get signed to a label like Victory and spend 2.5 weeks in the studio, and not have to take money out of our pocket, was the blessing behind it. That
Sure.
we had the opportunity to do that. Um, so I don't think I'm not, we never pondered on that whole thing. We just continued to do ourselves like we always did.
Sure.
And we just thought inevitably we would meet either with a manager or someone who would have a great interest. But again, it's at a time where Epitaph was pumping out the bands, Victory was pumping out the bands. Warp Tour was huge at, big, it was brand new and it was big. And there was just, I'm not going to say saturated, there was just a lot of music coming from all different directions.
Oh yeah.
And it just never came together. But I'm
And,
thankful.
and
I
it
mean, I'm thankful that,
Yeah, it seems like it would be really difficult, especially on a label like Victory, where they had like so many projects. It would be really easy to get like lost in the shuffle. Not to mention like the hardcore scene in general. I mean, like you said, oversaturation.
yeah,
It's even probably more so now, and especially with like streaming media. Like it's like it's
yeah,
over. Like you start a band and anybody can hear you if they need to.
yeah. There's the pros and cons to the whole thing. I mean, I love that hardcore music is still alive and kicking. I mean, it's just like, I love on a Friday night or a Saturday night or whenever I'm in the mood, you could go anywhere and see some good hardcore bands. And
Sure.
I really think that that was the objective of any band in the beginning in the punk hardcore scene was, you know, uh, to really establish the scene and and then kind of like hand it down to the next set of bands that were coming up. And like I said in the beginning of the podcast, when we were kind of coming up as Hogan's Heroes, AOD, Bedlam, Pleased Youth, all those bands were already doing the circuit. They were already playing New York and all the clubs that we inevitably wanted to get into. So we just kind of followed them and learned. And I'm kind of hoping that that's what we did for other bands in our area. We kind of just paved the way for them, and now they're doing it.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
a wonderful thing, man. It's like, I remember I played in a band and there was a band that came out of the state that named their band after one of my old band songs. And I was like, oh, it's super
Yeah.
flattering, like at least we did something
Yeah.
significant, that's cool, but uh it's 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 one of those things where it's like you look at this band. I don't know if you're familiar with this band Knocked Loose. Are you familiar with them?
I have heard of them.
Okay. They're like a newer hardcore band, and I'm not that familiar with them myself, but apparently they knocked Taylor Swift off of the number one spot on Spotify.
That I did not know. That's
That's
amazing.
wild. That is wild. Like
That's
that
amazing.
to me, I never would have thought I would experience anything like that in my lifetime. Seeing a hardcore band
That's awesome.
usurp this multi-platinum, it's almost like a fucking godlike status,
Like beyond anything anyone could imagine.
Right. Yeah. I thought that was really wild. And kind of speak of like newer hardcore acts, like is that something you mentioned going to hardcore shows. Is that something you still do to kind of check out like the newer groups that are coming up?
Yeah, I mean, some of the bands that had come up, many years after us. There's a local band here called Kirby Kiss. My niece at one time was playing bass for them, so I got turned on to them, and I'll go see them at Salty's in Belmar, and we did a show with them out in Trenton at Mill Hill Basement. Um, so with going to see them, they're bringing their friends' bands in, and I'm getting turned on to those bands. Um, so yeah, I mean, it was funny because at one of the shows, I distinctively remember seeing this shirt that said "Speed," and I'm like, "What is that? Like gym equipment or something like that?" And I really, I don't even know where my head was at the time. And
Sure.
then, I heard some kids talking about the band and stuff, and then I looked them up, and I was like, "Holy fuck!" Like I don't know if you've ever watched any of their videos. They're from like Australia, I believe, and just this real great hardcore. And then I ended up going to see them out in Philly, and that's what I love. That's the passion behind being in the hardcore scene is watching these bands. It's like back in the day, like when the Gorilla Biscuits came out. You know what I mean? They were one of those pinnacle bands that just took off, and to be part of that era of music with Judge and Youth of Today and the Gorilla Biscuits. I mean, it was phenomenal. So, in the same essence, this band Speed is doing kind of like the same thing. They just hit the ground running, and um, I just love it. I love the hardcore scene. I think it's fantastic.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm a lifer, man. I love it too. And best scene that is not your local scene. Who really would set it off for any of your projects when you would go out on the road? Like best city to play in.
I got to tell you, man. Chicago never disappointed. And as far as Hogan's Heroes was concerned, whenever we went out to Pennsylvania, like Wally's played, Oliver J's with like Warzone or Vision, just amazing. You know, like the welcoming was always awesome. And like I said, it was the same thing with Chicago. Chicago never let us down. I mean, always made us feel like the work that we were putting into it was really paying off. And I don't know what other guys and bands have said, but recently OS went to Puerto Rico in February to play,
Shit.
and that was amazing. And I'm going to tell you why it was amazing, because it reminded me of the late 80s when you would go into a town and people were just thoroughly excited that there was a hardcore band coming in to play their small town. And it was always thank you, thank you, thank you for coming here. And that's exactly what Puerto Rico is like in 2024. I mean, we were so just, we felt so blessed that these guys over there, kids and men and women and girls, you know, they were just so thankful, you know, because we came with respect. We, you know, you know, fell in love with Puerto Rico, fell in love with, you know, just the whole, the family element that's still alive there. Just, it was like going back to the 80s. They were just so, they made you feel so good, humbled, thanking you for being there. Please come back again. And still talk to a lot of them today on the internet, just still talking about shows going on in the area. So I'd say Chicago, Pennsylvania, and then as of recent, Puerto Rico is just amazing, amazing place to play.
Yeah. I hear some great things about it. My friend Layla from Concrete Ties, shout out. She said she saw some amazing shows there, and yeah, it's like one of those things where they probably don't get a lot of like hardcore bands over there, so anytime somebody does show up, they're yeah, like you said, extremely grateful. That must have been a really must have been like a really great experience.
Oh, it was fantastic. And what made it even better was that we made there. Shut had been doing like a kind of like a Southeast tour. I think it was like Jacksonville, or it was like Tampa, Jackson, Miami. And then they flew out to Puerto Rico for their last night of that like little stint. And we played with them at a club, Club 77. And it was just bonkers. And, you know, Vinny from Agnostic Front was there, and we had learned like six songs. Some of them were Vinny songs, some of them were AF songs. So we did a set. We backed up Vinny, you know,
Shit,
doing his set of music. So it was just
that's awesome.
it was just amazing. And there's a great band out there called Secret Bound. So if you get a chance, from Puerto Rico called Secret Bound. As a matter of fact, they're going to be playing a festival out in PA. I want to say the end. I don't know the technicalities of the whole thing, but they are called Secret Bound, and they're very, very cool guys. And
Okay.
check them out. They're very cool.
Secret Bound. All right, sounds good.
Yeah.
Now, what do you feel like the biggest challenge to being in a band is, or like even a like specifically hardcore band? What do you? I mean, aside from the obvious, like most people they do it with no real expectations of any sort of monetary gain or success. They just do it because they love it. But aside from that, like, what do you feel like are the biggest obstacles and kind of things that are prevalent in hardcore bands?
Um, you know, I don't want to overthink that, because everything that you said really are the obvious reasons why it's playing for a band. And as you get older, it's family situations and trying to get everybody on the same page. And I think with a band like us, um, there's no dollar to get. We were established that. And so anytime we go out on the road to do a series of shows, we have to treat it like it's like a vacation that we're going on, that we're preparing to not only fund renting a vehicle and getting to where we got to go in the hotels, but also when we get back, we have to have prior money to pay the bills. So hardcore shows just never paid well. I mean, and really that's one of those expectations. You were getting that $65 a night, and you were with maybe, 12 or 13 other bands. So, it got a little bit, there was guarantees, but it was never a high guarantee for us. So that I think that's the greatest obstacle with myself and the boys is knowing that we're going out there kind of like prepaid. We've already got our bills prepaid. We've already got our travel prepaid. And what come back with, it's either going towards a debt that we created to get out there, or, you got $50 in your pocket,
That's the glamour of being in a hardcore or punk rock band. It's, really got to do it for
Yeah.
the love of it. You have to.
Yeah.
Now,
And go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, 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 no. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I think, it goes back to what you said, you can't have any expectations of starting a punk or a hardcore band. It's got to be about the love of it, being with friends, meeting up with old friends, and you know, if other things come with it, great. If they don't, then yeah, it's okay.
You had some fun, yeah. I've never heard of it as like, and the way you describe it is like planning a vacation. That's a really apt description because, yeah, you're going to a bunch of different places, you're traveling, and you're funding it yourself, and you're oh, got to make sure I take time off from work or whatever, and yeah, like you said, got to be able to cover all your bills when you come back. So, yeah,
Yeah,
it's a challenge.
yeah, absolutely.
Now, Now, rewinding back to Hogan's Heroes a little bit, um, I understood for the longest time somebody's like, "Oh, OS101 is basically Hogan's Heroes," and I'm like, "Well, I did a little bit more like digging. Come to find out that one of your members went and played for the Transmaghetti. Is that correct?"
Yeah, yeah.
I do remember
Uh,
that band actually, not
you,
hardcore.
you know, oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, listen, they had their home base was like downtown's River. Like you're seeing that band called Skyscraper. Um, that was the scene in the area for a little while, and that was actually Brian who was playing drums with us for a little while. He was actually the drummer in that band,
Oh,
and
cool.
that's where we met Ian, who ended up becoming the bass player at the tail end of Heroes when I moved over to guitar. So yeah.
Why didn't you want to keep the name though?
Uh, well, we finally had put together a tour to go out to the West Coast, and we had never gotten an opportunity to go out there. We knew a lot of bands, but we had never gotten the opportunity to go out there. And we had just released on Resurrection. Um, it's called one side of the record is called 101. The other side is called Three Fists and a Mouthful. And we had recorded the Uncle been 7-inch our own with Brian on drums. And we decided that we had met enough people that we could get out to the West Coast and do some shows. And when we got out there, what I kept on hearing, you know, when we played like Gilm Street with Redemption 87, and Lars was there from Rancid, and I kept on hearing, you know, where have you guys been? Like we've been waiting for you, you know, for you guys to come out and play, you know. And this is like, you know, Built to Last was released in '88, and we're now finally out there, and it's like 90, no, God, probably later than mid to late 90s. I would say it was prior just to becoming OS101. So, you know, and I kept hearing that, and it kept echoing with me. And I just felt like we missed the opportunity. It just didn't develop for us to get out there. And we were driving. We ended up jumping on a gig that was happening in Tijuana with the Battalion of Saints. And we were on our way to Mexico. And I was sitting with Skip, and I said, you know, so many band members have come and gone. You know, Tony, our drummer, was in the band at the time. So theoretically, it was only Skip and I that were the original guys.
Original members.
And I was just like, I think we should lay it to rest. And, maybe when we get back, start venturing into doing something new. Because I just felt like we weren't really doing what Hogan's Heroes was any justice. And it was just like that aching inside to do something new, to move forward. And if somewhere down the line, people wanted to see Hogan's Heroes, well, maybe we could cultivate that and make that happen. And really, it was on that tour out to the West Coast. And just like I said, hearing, that, hey, where you been? They were 17 waiting for us, and now they're, in their late 20s and their early 30s, and they're making it out to the show just to finally see us. So I just felt like it was a transition that needed to happen. Sure. And we were all bored on it. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. And I mean, I guess to a certain point when a band rotates members so much, they kind of cease to be that thing in a way. They almost end up being like a cover band of their own material, So I could understand why you would want to, go and just, hey, let's just call it something new. Did you guys play Hogan's Heroes songs too, or was it just OS101 material?
Yeah, we had done, when we became Old School 101, it was all about that band. We weren't really doing any Hogan's Hero songs. Later on, we ended up throwing a couple of the songs into the set because we kept on hearing, Stuck in a Rut or Inner Strength, and we would pull one out and play it. But we just left it to its own devices. And we actually had reformed and did a show as Hogan's Heroes. We did a show with Underdog up at the Brighton Bar in Long Branch. But again, it was Skip, Tony on drums. I was playing guitar. And of course, Ian, who was the last member of Hogan's Heroes playing bass, who was the bass player for OS101, that was the Hogan's Hero show that we did. And it went over really great. It was fun, but it was a one-off.
Is the plan to, you mentioned playing in Puerto Rico, is the plan to kind of do just more like, one-offs and like little mini tours, like just in the future?
Yeah, I hope that that's what we can sustain. There has interest, since we did Puerto Rico, there has been interest to get us out internationally, not over to Europe. Love to do during the festival time, but I think really the whole motivation right now is we get together once or twice a month just to keep our chops up And if something comes our way, we'll jump on it. Um, I no doubt would love to do, a full tour. Um, it's just we would have to probably be invited to play with the right band to do it, and
Sure.
again, just plan a. So it's not out of the question that we would never go out on the road. We absolutely want to go out on the road. It's just that it has to be, um,
In the
properly done.
conditions. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's great. I mean, it's interesting to see like a lot of these bands, um, you know, having been like full-fledged touring acts, just kind of keeping it low key and we understand that, like life starts to progress and people have careers and families and things like that, so you can't instantly throw down whatever it is that you're doing and get on the road. So I think that's, probably the best thing is like long weekends and then just like you said, if the conditions are right for like, tour, like, one-off show with like the right bands and stuff, that just seems to be the way to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. Well, it's the most sensible way of doing it, and still getting out and supporting the local scene. Like we had the Black and Blue Bowl last weekend up in New York City. Still getting out to those shows and hanging with our old friends, and that's always the way something is going to develop, whether it's kicking it with the guys from Crown of Thorns, or if you get lucky enough to ever go out with like Agnostic Front, who's killing it right now.
Yeah.
You know, you leave those doors open, because if it comes through, then you go. And I think the band agrees that that would be the only way to do it, would be to be a strong opening act for another band, and just have a good time.
Yeah, that sounds great. What's a day in the life like for you? What do you do outside of playing music?
uh, I mean, now, for over 20 years, I had owned my own sign business, and I did, I lettered vehicles and boats and stuff like that. And then over the last 5 years ago, I got hired by the state, actually the county, um, to work in the graphics department. So
Oh, nice.
my day is waking up at 5 a.m., um, waking up with a little bit of coffee or tea and taking a shower, doing some meditating, um, doing my stretching, and punching in by 10 to 7, and punching out at 3:30. And if there's no waves, then maybe take a little bike ride. My mom's older now, so she needs a little bit of assistance. So I will drive over there, and spend time with her pretty much Monday through Friday night, and wake up the next day and do it all again.
Again, yeah, I hear you, man. What do you do? Like, do you have any other like creative pursuits? I mean, you mentioned graphics and obviously music, but like, do you have any other things that you do outside of those things, like whether it be writing or any other creative pursuits?
Well, I'm actually trying to put together a coffee table style book, because I letter boats, and the area that I live in, which is basically the whole eastern seaboard. Um, I'm trying to put a book together called Naughty Cows, nautical and decals kind of put together. And it's
Okay.
all the boats that not a bulk of the boats that I've lettered, um, you know, since my mid 20s. Some of them are real creative. And I've been trying to kind of put that together and see if there would be someone interested in releasing that. So that's one of the ventures that I'm working on. And other than that, it's really just been more of a spiritual journey, and you know, um, just trying to find that calm. Um, staying in touch with people, still playing in bands and still writing music. And, I'm lucky because I'm blessed to do what I've always wanted to do, which is art. And, I get paid for it. So, other than the book that I'm
Great.
trying to get together, that's basically what's going on.
Right on. That's the dream, though, man. Like you're doing what you
Yeah.
love and you're getting paid for it. It's great. Do you
Yeah.
like
No,
follow
feel,
any? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, 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 no. I just was going to say I feel blessed. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a great thing to be able to do what you love and be able to sustain yourself because of it.
Yeah.
What do you like as far as are you like a media guy? Like, do you like film? Do you like television? I'm always curious to hear like what's on people's radar as far as like what they're watching, what they're reading, what they're listening to. What do you got?
Yeah. I love World War II history. So I'm kind of a fanatic about that. I
Okay.
had a lot of uncles and stuff that were, over in Europe. Um, my father's first cousin, was a radio sergeant in a B-17.
Oh
Um,
wow.
so I'm really into World War II history. As a matter of fact, I did an interview probably about 6 months ago with this gentleman from England. His name is Robert Forbes, and he's actually gonna he's gonna write a book on bands that, like, when he was growing up over in England. Um, he's when he called me to talk to me, he's like, first of all, this isn't an insult, but I'm writing a book about bands that I felt should have become bigger than what they did become. And so he did an interview with me for Hogan's Heroes, which he felt, in his own words, should have risen higher than what we did. Um, so I got to do an interview with him, which was super cool. And I'm looking forward to when that book comes out. And I don't even know where I was going with that.
We were talking about like media and things like that, and I want to talk
Yeah,
about World War II
yeah,
history a little bit because I that's definitely a fascinating thing. I've dredged the internet for like I'll watch like documentaries and stuff. So I have to ask you, what is your favorite World War II themed film?
wow. Man.
I'll tell you, like
Well,
Private
I got
Ryan's
to tell
pretty
you,
high tier for me.
yeah, listen, the filming in Band of Brothers was just like mind
Oh
blowing.
yeah, yeah.
The color tones that they used, just it was just an amazing. It would be everything that I thought it would have been to be over there.
Sure.
But I loved the Memphis Belle. I
Oh
loved the
yeah.
story behind it. And I don't know if you've ever been on one of those bombers, but it's like the aluminum on those planes is about paper thin, and to
Oh
know
yeah.
that a 30 or 50 millimeter round is going to come flying through there,
Oh yeah.
um, it kind of puts the whole thing into perspective. And the one
Sure.
thing that I had learned at some point was that a lot of these fighters that were built during World War II were only meant to last, like, I think it was like 120 hours of flying time.
Really?
Like, they actually, yeah, they were actually built around the fact that these fighters were probably maybe going to make 120 hours if they were lucky. So
Lucky, yeah.
when it comes to, like, and also too, the Battle of Britain is to me is just phenomenal. I mean, I love that movie. I love the
I
Spitfire.
haven't seen that.
I'm really into the Battle of Britain. I mean, that came out probably late 60s, early 70s, the original one. And
Okay.
that was a great movie. And also, what was it? Can't remember the name of the movie. Dunkirk.
Yeah.
You
Dunkirk.
know,
Yeah.
with the yeah, with the Spitfires. I'm really into the air part of the war of it
Love the
all,
airplanes,
and
man.
love it,
When you
love
when
it.
you me-
Also,
when you
too,
mentioned if I'd ever been on
oh,
one
oh,
of those, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, 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 go.
I was just gonna say you had mentioned whenever if I'd ever been on one of those, and they had it was a uh, Air Force base near where I used to live in Montana, and they would have all the old like World War II planes out on display, and I actually did get to go on a B-17, and it's crazy because it looks bigger, and you get in there and it's kind of cramped. You're like,
Yeah,
wow, this is a lot smaller than I thought it would be, and it's like, you know yeah, like you said, I don't remember specifically like the aluminum on the planes, but like it looked like it could just be a death trap. Like one thing could go wrong in there and the whole thing would go, up in flames.
I just the, you think about bravery. Um, to get into one to 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 fly over to Germany or wherever they needed to go, um, to be shot at and to make it back alive. It just it's harrowing. It's phenomenal to even think about. But I think with being in the sign business and dealing with like 040 aluminum and different substrates, that was one of the first things I picked up on was like opening up the door to get in and like knocking on this and going, holy shit, like, you know, I just don't know how they did it. I guess maybe because they were 17 and 18 years old,
Yeah.
it probably,
Did you ever do decals for airplanes?
yeah, I did. Well, not like full size planes. There's a couple of big radio control places that are around here, and I'll cut graphics for them, and they stick it on their planes. But I never did any kind of a full scale Cessna or anything like that.
Okay, okay. Yeah, and back to the World War II movies. Midnight Clear. Have you ever seen that one?
No.
Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna have to send
Yeah.
you a trailer for it. It's got Ethan Hawke and God, I can't remember who else. The guy that played Brett in Pulp Fiction, the one that like stole the shit from
Oh yeah, yeah,
Marcellus
yeah.
Wallace or whatever. Yeah, he's in it. And Gary Sinise, that's who it was. Really good. I think it was like an
Wow.
HBO movie or something. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's
Okay.
about these guys. They have a truce on Christmas Day. It's the Germans and the American soldiers. They have like a truce on Christmas Day. Kind of goes sideways, but you got to watch it. It's really good. But uh,
Oh yeah.
Bridge Too Far. You ever seen that one?
Oh, now all classics.
Oh yeah, that cast is stellar too. That cast is stacked. It's amazing. Yeah,
Oh,
and that's one of the things about like you mentioned like the flying and stuff. That the whole like okay, let's Star Wars. Like you've got three different elements to it. You've got the criminal, seedy underbelly. You've got like the pilots and everything like that, and then you've got the space wizards. And what always attracted me
yeah.
to Star Wars was the space battles because it was very like George Lucas was very uh he wanted to do like World War II in space, and that the X-wing versus the TIE
Yeah.
fighters, that was always Black Sheep Squadron. You remember that one?
Awesome.
Yeah, I loved
Yeah.
watching that
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
Pappy Boyington and everything. Yeah, that was what really kind of hooked me because it was like it was essentially a recreation of like aerial dogfights in space, and like I still think some
Yeah.
of those planes, like
Yeah.
the uh the Mustang, the P-51 Mustang. Mm. That's my plane right there, man.
I mean, what they built, it's funny getting back to Star Wars because, as a kid, going to see like Return of the Jedi, I think had a lot of those elements of dogfights and stuff. And that was, I mean, between the TIE fighter and the X-Wing fighter, it was just, it got that adrenaline going.
Mhm.
And it's funny because he did a lot of elements from the German army. I mean, the Imperial
Oh yeah.
Army definitely had that look, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, and it's funny when you go back and you watch a lot of them, you can see elements of different movies that you've seen, war movies, kind of placed in there. Um, but yeah, I mean, even like the Snow Fighter, when they did the Snow Fighter, Spurs, and it just amazing stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I could I could talk all day about World War II and World War II history and World War II movies. I love it, man. It's great. Yeah, that's cool. That's
Well,
such a neat.
and and go
Go ahead.
and going back to the book with the gentleman from England, he had written, and I guess that's the reason why I kind of went into it, is because he had written a book that was on um, Nazi Germany, and apparently it did very well. And I think it's in its third or fourth publication now. I don't know the name of it offhand, but um, I was thrilled when he contacted because I had heard of him, um, and the fact that he was now going to do this book on the hardcore punk scene, and it's all the way that came together.
That's awesome. Did you know that the Nazis had youth camps like Hitler youth camps in the United States during the 30s?
Well, yeah, if I'm not mistaken, like yeah, they were in all kind of like small towns. I don't want to, man, I don't want to throw the wrong thing out there, but there might have been like a small town in Jersey, a small town in PA. Like there were
West
all
Pennsylvania,
little,
yeah.
yeah, there were all little elements of that. And I mean, one of the things too is that you know Germans that had become American citizens, prior to the outbreak of the war, going back to fight for their mother country. I mean, it's mind blowing. You know what I mean?
Mhm. That was one of the things
But
in Band of Brothers. When they found that kid
right,
that was from Oregon, that was really
yeah.
German, that had his family went back, that's fucking wild to me.
I mean, can you imagine? I mean, it's just it would be, you would be beside yourself over there. And then like you or I, like we did like this together, and then like in a year and a half, I see you, and one of us is now on the other side, and it's just
Right.
because it's where you're from.
Yeah.
It's crazy
But
to even imagine, but
it's also one of those things too where it's like you've grown up in this culture for so long, like the American culture, and like you go and you're forced to it'd be like if Ireland declared war on the United States and be like, "Well, I got to go back and fight for the country of my ancestors or whatever." It's like, Why?" you know?
why why do you
It's
want to
like,
do that? Yeah,
yeah, it just doesn't
it's
make
really
sense.
sometimes beyond the reasoning. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild, man. Now, I know we had mentioned some of the bands earlier in the show. Is there anybody like as far as bands that you want to shout out or individuals you want to shout out? People that are doing things?
Yeah, I mean, always to like listen, Stickman Fury of Five, like
Sick man.
that's my boy. I love the
Nice.
fact that they are grinding, they're hard. Um, has always represented New Jersey just on a completely another level. Just
Oh
an
yeah.
amazing band. Russ from Dog, his band, huge. Um, again, that band from Puerto Rico, Secret Bound, great band. Um, and I also, I want to throw in real quick that we actually had to hire an attorney because we've got a record company that has illegally released um, two of our records from Hogan's Heroes. Um,
Oh shit.
and I, yeah, yeah. Cleopatra Records from Los Angeles um, basically has re-released Built to Last and the self-titled record without contacting us. And I bought the rights back from Nicky Garrett, who owned New Red Archives. I bought the rights back in the 90s. So I have the master tapes, the artwork. It's all documented. And I was really blessed to get introduced to an amazing attorney out of New York. His name is George Grasso. He takes care of all the New York City bands. He does. He takes care of all the legalities for Thompson Square Park, where there's a lot of free shows. And I really want to send him a shout out because he's the guy who is taking care of a lot of the bands like us, where, you know, these record companies think, oh, they're older now, they probably don't care. And we do care. And the fact that they even changed the look of the cover and the artwork is really disheartening. So anybody who's watching, and as a matter of fact, I have them right here. This was our first record, as most people know. Came out on New Red Archives. This record label, Cleopatra, came out and released this, changing it to pink lettering, and it's the original photograph, so it's all milky. They stretched out photographs of us, they took away, the credits here of who engineered us, and it's really, really a bummer. And, this was our second record. The hardcore back and the colorful front, and their version of the record.
So have you had any contact with them
So,
subsequently? Like, to be like, aside from like attorneys, did you ever speak with them and be like, yo, this is fucked up?
you know, um, no, I didn't reach out, and I'm going to tell you why. Because when I bought the rights back from Nicky was no longer going to do New Red Archives anymore. And we had a telephone conversation, and I said, I'd really like to buy everything back from you if that's possible. We agreed on a number, and I bought everything back to protect the band. And then it was prior to going to Puerto Rico, I had seen an ad, Built to Last, limited on pink vinyl, from this company, Cleopatra. And I knew exactly what was going to happen. I mean, if I would have picked up the phone and I would have introduced myself and, would have said, hey, listen, what's going on? The first thing that they would have did is they would have said, oh, we had no idea. When we bought the rights to New Red Archives, we thought that was part of it. They would have done a song and dance. They would have said, oh, we'll send you $1.50 a copy, even though this is all hearsay. And we'll send you any product back. The thing is, these records are selling for fucking $20, and the first limited to 500 and the second one's limited to 400. So if these guys are clearing $20 a pop on these records, I didn't even want to deal with it. I didn't want to be insulted. And the fact that they desecrated all the hard work that we had done, I made my phone calls to my friends up in New York who play in bands, and they all pointed at this attorney, Mr. Grotto, and that was really the only way to approach this, which was basically a formal cease and desist. And unfortunately, they're playing hardball. So it's going to go further than that. I'm hoping that it doesn't go to a federal court, but if it does, I might have to actually do a GoFundMe to try to battle these guys because what they're doing is wrong. And it's the
No.
same old story. We're not the only band that has gone through this. And we're actually doing this to protect future bands also. It's not okay to go out and start releasing stuff that you don't own.
Yeah. And Ramon here says, just Google that label. They have a bad reputation.
Yeah. And that plays to our
Releasing
advantage,
people's shit. That's
I'm
crazy,
sorry.
man. Oh, I said
Yeah.
releasing people's shit. Yeah, they have a bad reputation, definitely.
And you know what the funny thing is? It's been such a compliment to get a phone call, right? To say, hey, we always loved your band. We'd like to like reissue, some limited edition, and maybe we could remaster the tapes and work with you on getting the artwork updated. You know what? We probably would have come to some great agreement. But the
Yeah.
fact that a phone call wasn't made, it's just it's sad. So you might be seeing me doing some kind of like a GoFundMe because it's not going to be
Shit.
cheap to kind of battle a record label like Cleopatra, but it needs to be done. They need to be made an example of.
Hmm. And like I mean, like you said, I think most hardcore bands would have been receptive to something like that. Like if you would just approach them and be like, "We really like this record. We want to reissue it. Let's work something out." Da da da. I can't think of
Yeah,
a single hardcore band that would be unless they had, if it was being released on another label and they still, own the rights and whatnot. I can't think of any like hardcore band that would not at least be receptive to that, you know?
yeah, yeah, and that's exactly what I was just explaining. It's like, a simple phone call of interest, and all of this could have been avoided. But I don't know if when I was holding this up, if you were able to really see this, but
Yeah.
you, you know, this is what they put out to replace this, and if this was like a live bootleg from CB's or something like that, it would be one
Yeah.
thing. But to completely abstract what we did, it was basically a spit in our face, and I'm
Yeah.
willing to take on the challenge. It's going to cost a couple of bucks to do.
I'll be sure to donate, man. And if you ever like share like a PayPal link or GoFundMe or anything like that, I'll be sure to put it out there because that's bullshit, man. Like that's
Thank
just next level
Yeah,
fucking
I
fuckery right there.
yeah, and it's just unacceptable. And yeah, I appreciate that, Jay, and I'm going to take you up on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and in some way, I hope it does go public that way because like if you go to our Facebook page, OS101 has a Facebook page. I have um, fanzines and contracts that we had signed when we were kids. And the reason why I did that was so anybody who was interested could read, and look at our contracts, and we're kind of like we took our page to a level of education, where if you have an interest in us, that's awesome. But it's also showing you the original negotiated contract that we had with New Red Archives. Um, and it's all out there. And the funny thing is I think they claimed that they tried to contact me in some way. Well, if you Google me, you know I'm all over the place. So I'm sure they could have gotten a hold of me to re-release the stuff properly.
Yeah. And that's no like excuse either that they didn't get in touch with you because it's like, you know, they still went around and did some shady shit, you know? It's like eh,
Yeah,
if you don't have the blessing, don't go ahead and proceed with it. I'd be curious to see what their legal defense would say. Like, what sort of rationalization they would be able to be like, well, we released these records because X and Y or whatever. But it doesn't sound like they have much of a case.
No, they really don't. I mean, they did they did have their rebuttal letter, but it was really it was really simple minded. I'd like to say everything, which I mean, I don't know what level I could talk about it. So, but it was really just like wow, trying to get out of something that they just really fucked up on.
Bunch of LA fucking duplicitous fucking scam artist motherfuckers. That sucks, man. I'm that yeah, like you said, your hard work is desecrated. They didn't put all this effort into the album. You guys laid all the groundwork, and they just said, "We're gonna take it." What a bunch of bunch of fucking
Yeah,
assholes, I
and
swear.
yeah, and that's exactly how I feel inside. And to have your I did most of the art on these. I mean, I was a young artist at the time, and I did the layout and the designs for these. So to get these in the mail, and I purchased these, I put them on my credit card, and I have it under my name, I have it under my business name. It's almost like me saying, here I am, I'm actually purchasing these records. And when I got them, it was just like, wow, like that's blasphemy. It's like, I mean, I can't compare what we did to say like Agnostic Front's Victim in Pain, but can you imagine like somebody coming in from left field and like releasing Victim in Pain with like a floral front cover or something like that? And it would you would just be beside yourself over the whole thing. And that's exactly how we all feel about this. It's just like, you know it's just a company that I have a huge problem with right now. And anybody out there, please do not go and buy these limited edition records, because they were not authorized by any of us in the band. And if there is a GoFundMe page, and you guys do help us out, we'll be sure and repay you guys by doing a show, or whatever we could do with any of your help, if it should go to court.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I really hope it does, just based on principle. Like you said, that's y- uh, you just fucking scumbags, like, and I'll be sure to clip this video too, so we can share it and kind of bring to light like what this fucking skeezy company is doing. Cleopatra Records, we're coming for you, you motherfuckers. So fuck all that
Yeah.
shit. Like, what a
Yeah.
bunch of scumbags. Yeah, I'll be sure to make like a clip of this so it can make its way around, and people can
Yeah. Appreciate
understand
it.
the fucked up shit that they're doing. Well, cool,
Yeah.
man. I don't want to end on a bad note, because that that uh that's a really harrowing situation to be in
Yeah.
legal
Yeah.
troubles over intellectual property that these scumbags had no right to. But
Yeah.
okay, so you shouted out the attorney. That was great. Anybody else you want to shout out?
Yeah. Just like, all the boys in the band who are still grinding, Skip and Tony, and, you know, um, again, just, everybody who's playing music in any scene, besides New Jersey, just
Mhm.
keeping it going, and doing it from your heart, not your head. That's the most important thing. When you love, it shows. So, I just want to send that out to everybody who continues to do it. Like yourself, you're doing what you love to do, and now you're bringing my story to light for other people to see. So I thank you for that, Jay.
Absolutely. And I thank you for being here, man. And people absolutely need to hear about this too, because it's, like I said, such a fucked up situation that this happens to bands, and hardcore bands. It's like, I get like making like fucking Taylor Swift bootlegs or something like that. Is she ever gonna like, really suffer from that? Probably not. I don't think it's right all across the board. I'm just saying, like, to do it to like a hardcore band is just so fucking heinous.
Yeah, because it's against everything that any of us ever did. You know, we reflecting on it with a phone call, it could have all been situated, but it didn't happen that way. So, and actually, that's not leaving on a low note. It's leaving on a high note, you know, because this needs to be situated,
Right.
and people need to be educated that this shit goes on, and
Yeah.
it's not fair. And you know, even though you might be blessed to sign to a record label, you know, sometimes there's some shady stuff that goes on. And
Oh yeah.
any of the new breed out there, just always protect yourself. There's a
Yes.
thing, I'm going to throw this out there. There's a thing called the poor man copyright. I learned that in my first year of art school. And what it is if you draw something or write something or create a logo, you mail it to yourself, but you mail it to yourself registered. So you have to sign for it. And then you never
Ah, yeah.
open it. That is the poor man's copyright. So in
Mhm.
this case, I did this. I did this to the name, and I registered. I registered as us as a business in the state of New Jersey, and that's sealed document. That if we need to go to court, I've got that. So it's little things like that that you have to learn to do to protect yourself in the long run.
No doubt, man. It's yeah. You know, yeah, young bands need to know all the legal shit going into the situation because you might make a decision as far as like, oh, signing a contract or doing something that's going to affect you like years down the road, you know. So yeah, always know
Yeah,
the legal ins and outs of everything.
absolutely.
Well, John, dude, I want to thank you so much, and like I said, I'll be sure to clip all the legal stuff so we can share that out and make people aware of what's going on.
Thank you.
One thing,
Thank you.
absolutely, one thing I like to do is promote Hell's Heart merch company. As you can see, hellsheartco.bigcartel.com, 20% off your entire order. Use that code. I just want to throw up some samples real quick. Here's the Steve McQueen Bullet mock we did. This is parody. We didn't rip this off.
Nice.
It's the Hell's Heart Black Flag logo. This is the Psycho 2 mock that we have. This is the Scream mock, the glow in the dark Tatum, and here's the glow in the dark Randy from Scream. But all fan inspired art. We didn't rip that
Beautiful.
shit off. So, yeah, this is all hand
Nice.
drawn by
Nice.
the bass player of this band, Violent Life, Violent Death, my boy Justin. So, yeah, we made all that shit. So,
Very cool.
don't come and sue us.
Very cool. Very
But
cool. Good job.
yeah, so thanks. um, but yeah, like I said, check out my official merch company, hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. And assuming we ever get like a GoFundMe going, I'll be sure to post the link down here in the comments so you can support John and OS101 and get these fucking thieves out of commission here. But uh like, comment, share, subscribe, click on that bell for
Absolutely.
notifications. I want to thank everybody for showing up. And again, I want to thank Mr. John Cuccinello. This has been fantastic. And hope to see you again on the show in the future. All right,
Thank you,
guys.
Jay.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Hang out for
Have
a
a
few
good one.
seconds backstage after the show. All right, guys. Namaste.
Absolutely.
God bless. Be good.